Session 602. Good evening. Now, anytime you want to record a session and have it typed up, then I will deal with recordable material. Rob said, okay. Rob noted, they say this because I was tired tonight. We have been having some deleted sessions lately also. They said, there are several issues and avenues of development in the summary experience. It will unfold, therefore. The statement is, comparatively speaking, a simple one, so that we can see what Ruber can do with it. Corrections will be made if necessary when he is finished. In time, the summary language will be replaced, you see, by symbols. Helpfully, fairly faithful representations of symbols used in some ancient manuscripts. The information aptly precedes manuscripts. The data was also given, as I told you, by speakers before the time of recognized written language. Some of the speakers were summary, and so we will often deal with speakers who were summary. Therefore, the material will have a typical summary slant and interest, a characteristic focus upon certain areas. Other speakers of different groups would specialize in quotes in the same way. Sounds aptly exist before language. There is a pattern of sound beneath all languages, a bed of vocal communication that lies behind all language and alphabet. The vocal sounds of the summary language and the characteristics as they are presently apparent to you will, hopefully, lead toward these clearly understood but logically unstructured sounds that are recognized by the organism and by the inner self, but ignored by the reasoning conscious mind that focuses upon the logical language. The word in English is onomatopoeia. Rob asked, do you want to spell that out? They said, I cannot spell it. There are some in quotes defects of Ruber's that are even hard for me to surmount, and in this particular case for a special reason. Just add the note, as I do not want to get off the subject. The word onomatopoeia comes closest to explain the inner nature of such sounds. In your language, there are words that sound like the reality they try to represent. These are called onomatopoeia. Hush is an example. The word hush. It is understood as a quieting agent. When you say it correctly, the breath is slowed and leaves your body. Hush! The sounds finally seem to disappear. The body's feeling, the sound of the words, conveys the message. So independently of any language, there are sounds that in themselves convey such messages, that act upon the physical system. Their utterance demands certain characteristic uses of breath. What is felt by the organism approximates the meaning of the sounds, and to some extent is the meaning of the sounds. Such feeling tone words, in quotes, with pantomime or the expressive body, can therefore come closer often than structured language to convey various levels of emotion, to explain levels of subjective feeling that are often distorted in recognizable words. More than this, They act directly on the body. Physically speaking, it is one of the earliest forms of communication. This may lead to the suspicion that I expect you to return to the grins and groans connected in conventional thought with the caveman. Such is far from the case. This is a vital basic method of communication, upon whose inner intuitive and organism structure all other languages are formed and based. As a method of freeing you from stereotypes, then, this is important. More than this, intuitive information can be given through this method that quite escapes the limitations of logically structured verbal pattern. Some of the Sumari speakers in the beginning transmitted inner information in precisely such a way, and hopefully at some time, at least, a few such versions may be picked up by Ruber. So all of this is at the beginning stage. I will be here to see that this is put to practical use also, translated into terms that can be understood, and provide a firm basis from which you can further explore the nature of such ancient perceptions. Again, the two of you are well suited for this endeavor. Your interest in painting and your abilities do not only spring from the Denmark life, for example, but also arose out of your quite legitimate life as Nibi, when you were focused upon the visual symbols and their correct inscription. The slightest error in copying a symbol could change its meaning completely, hence your concern over details, and hence now your great threat in objective painting, and your occasional distrust of work that seems to come too easily. The symbols were representations of reality. To alter them through carelessness seemed almost a sacrilege, a betrayal of truth. In that regard, you saw yourself as the guardian of truth. Visually, you were able to pick up the present version of the summary statement. Do you follow me? Rob said, yes. Seth said, you were, as Nibi, extremely stern with your students, concerned that they not fall into carelessness. You were focused upon the transmission of knowledge. In the Denmark life, the love of the visual was still with you, but you were trying to allow yourself greater freedom with it, to feel the freedom of adding to what you saw, but you felt a great reluctance to do so. It is for that reason that you gave up painting in that life. This time, in a strange way, the circle returns, and yet opens, for you find yourself searching out anew the truths that you once copied with such great faithfulness. And now truly they become yours, as they were not then. You also understand the nature of truth, in quotes, better than you did, and are beginning to allow it its mobility and ever-changing grace in your paintings and in our work. The memory of the old symbols is within you, but not until you were free enough to make them your own could they return. You did help transmit the information also in highly stylized drawings, and to a much lesser extent through highly stylized voice patterns that were taught to students. You have a sense of rhythm and more conventional musical knowledge than Ruber. Yet, rhythmic patterns are very strongly in his makeup and appeared earlier, silently, so to speak, in his poetry. The rhythm represented the smooth mobility of the emotions, the ever-moving quality. The sound represented by the symbols then will speak to him. He will hear and know them. He is not as visually oriented as you, and it will be a while before the released sounds of the Sumerian language will visually appear to him as symbols. Between the two of you then, you are fairly well equipped for what we have in mind, and all of this must be translated back, you see, in language that you can understand. You may take your break. Now, for your own notes. The yoga exercises are important because they represent a physical commitment. Ram noted for Jen. They said, the resolution of his being is behind him now. He will stick to them. This is a physical statement of the inner change, and the inner change must be reflected physically, of course. The intention to work with, not against the body, and to help encourage its natural spontaneity and functions. As time permits, continue to discuss your plans together, both the trip and its details, and what you will do on your return. Your own relationship is excellent now, and the exercises will help in giving him greater physical spontaneity in your more intimate life. Impulses, therefore, will be allowed a more natural expression, as the daily stretching of the muscles adds to his trust of them and of his body. It is important that your plans are discussed, however, so that their reality is a present thing. I suggest that you type that portion out at the end of the session. Robert's proficiency with written and words and your proficiency with visual symbols will be put to use therefore. Again, your characteristics are admirably suited. You may be able to translate the verbalized sounds into pictures or into miniature pictures that later turn into symbols. There are various ways, in other words, open in which the information may finally be received. Your physical reality does also exist in the media of sound, not as the end product of the world's noises. But matter is again only one manifestation. When you happen to recognize of reality, the world is built up in other terms of atoms and molecules. Atoms and molecules can be heard, though not by your perceptive apparatus. They are not even seen, for that matter. I get it, I said. They said, by your perceptive apparatus. The same applies, however, to light, for the atoms and molecules also exist as patterns of light that are unperceived by you. Give us time here. At a certain point, sound becomes visual and light becomes sound. They are weighted then. But at other points, the correlation is not at all obvious. It is always there. At one level, sounds then can be theoretically perceived as light. Vowels and syllables exist as light as validly as they exist as sound. Vowels and syllables build up their own kind of, in quotes, light pattern, or light picture again, that you do not perceive. Light as you think of it then also exists as sound. There is no such thing as a sound barrier. It simply seems to you that there is. Kodalas represent the inner cohesive yet free-willing quality operating within all reality. That gives it both its organizing structure and its great element of spontaneity. Kodalas are therefore connected with the EE units of which I have spoken. Kodalas are the principles behind the units, or the principles upon which the units operate. Sound and light both result from the interaction of different kinds of kodalas. They sometimes merge and are perceived spontaneously and simultaneously by you. Sometimes they are perceived separately. The kodalas are operating substructures of energy with the ability to attract and repel, to become coercive or fall apart, carrying within themselves the knowledge of their own identity. Literally, the self-principle that allows them to retain their integrity as absolute even while merging with others and forming subsidiary alliances. As absolute manifestations of energy, one of their characteristics is the astonishing rapidity with which they can appear multidimensionally, simultaneously showing themselves in different guises, while maintaining the basic integrity from which the guises spring. For later reference now, at least, along these lines a number can be more than itself, and be duplicated invisibly as an equation, changing the nature of the equation and of the results, while never showing itself. A number can also parade as another number, overweighing an equation. Some numbers have in course silent partners. They attract certain other numbers more than others. Certain numbers by their presence imply the existence of others that are unsuspected. These also alter the nature of an equation, for which often no reason can be found. Certain numbers carry a greater burden than others, and other numbers ride upon their back. They have therefore far greater merit. Their in-course value is simply out of proportion. They attract greater energy. The numbers that you know by their existence imply the intrusion of other invisible numbers and multidimensional numerical systems. The 1, 3, 7, and 9 could indeed lead you to infinity if you knew how to follow them. Hopefully, this net material will become quite handy to you before too long. And now, you may take a break or end the session as you prefer. That said, I guess we'll end it then. They said, then let me add down numbers. Sound and light are of course all related and all versions of highly complicated kodalas. And I bid you a fond good evening. Ralph said, thank you very much. It's very interesting. They said, I meant it to be. Ralph said, very good. Good night, Seth.